Hey, it's Janette here from Janette's TV. I'm at the Elevate Tech Conference in Toronto. And what a conference this is. 4 days of incredible learning, all kinds of very high influencers in the digital and tech industries, from fashion to food and everything in between. Investments, health. We have so much great coverage coming at you. Please stay with us.
Co-founder and former CEO of Kickstarter. Since its inception, Kickstarter has raised more than $4 billion, launching countless careers that have gone on to win Grammys, Oscars, and even pioneer new fields of technology. He's been recognized as one of the fastest companies, most creative people, and Fortune Top 40's Under 40. This fall, he'll be adding author to his resume with his debut book titled, This Could Be Our Future. Here today to challenge our assumptions about how the world must be and show us the real change isn't as possible as we might believe. Please welcome to the stage, Yancey Strickler.
How y'all doing? Picture your commute to work. You walk out of your door, you get into your car, on your bike, you get on the bus. 30 minutes later, you arrive. Now think back. What stores did you see on the right-hand side on your way to work? If, like most people, you commute from a residential area to a commercial area, you probably saw things like Starbucks and banks and gas stations on the right-hand side of the road. And on the way back, when you're going back home, on the right-hand side of the road, you're likely to see restaurants and grocery stores and shopping centers, things you tend to need after work. The placement of businesses on either side of the street comes from something called the no left turn rule in the world of retail planning. The idea is very simple. The most important thing is to be a right-hand turn at the right time of day. People are that much more likely to turn right than left. Turning left is slower, it could be more dangerous, and people are less likely to do it, especially because traffic planners are always trying to guide us to the right. Now, the no left turn rule is an example of a hidden default, a way that our choices and our decisions are manipulated without us being aware of it. And there are a lot of hidden defaults in the world for very good reason. They're extremely powerful. Take something like organ donation rates. You would imagine that people decide whether to donate their organs based on their beliefs about the afterlife, but it's not true. In countries where organ donation is opt-in, people do that. In nations where people have to choose to opt out of organ donation, people are way more likely to give. People follow whatever the default is in front of them, whatever it is. This is the same reason why US Congress has not had re-election rates below 80% in the past 50 years. We keep going along with the default of electing the same people. This despite the fact that the approval rate of this same body has plummeted during this time, which leads to a crazy situation like 2014, where Congress had an 11% approval rating and 96% of them were re-elected. Now, I started thinking about hidden defaults when I saw my neighborhood in New York City start to change. This is a place called Mars Bar on the corner of 2nd Avenue and 1st Street in the Lower East Side. Mars Bar was a center of the punk movement. It's a dive bar. It's always been a big part of the neighborhood. And in 2013, Mars Bar went out of business and was replaced by a TD Bank. Now, what's crazy about this was at the time, there were already 3 other TD Banks within walking distance of this same location. And if you zoomed out bigger, Manhattan was just overflowing with bank branches. There are almost 1,000 bank branches in Manhattan alone. Each of these red dots is a bank branch. Not to mention that today, there are almost as many Subway restaurants in New York as there are subway stations. A hidden default is driving this change. And this is the same hidden default why entrepreneurship rates in America are half what they were per capita in 1977. That's a similar decline as the rate of smoking since then. Think of how many more people smoked in 1977 versus today. A similarly greater proportion of people used to be entrepreneurs too. The same hidden default driving that is the same hidden default that's putting Walmarts and big box stores everywhere. It's the reason why every movie is a sequel. And this is not something we're imagining. You can actually chart this out. Over the past 20 years, Hollywood stopped telling news stories and instead just retold stories they'd already told before. And the reason why this is happening is the same reason why Taylor Swift is on the cover of every magazine. And this default, this hidden default, is called financial maximization. This is the belief that the rational choice in any decision is whichever option makes the most money. This is the hidden default that runs the world. Now, you might think, isn't this just capitalism? Like, is this really such a new thing? And in 1776, Adam Smith wrote that it's not from the benevolence of the butcher that we expect to be fed, but because of their regard for their own self-interest. But notice that Adam Smith did not say that the butcher must maximize their hog slaughter rates, pay their employees as little as possible, and cut safety standards to the minimum, all to maximize profits. But this is all standard business behavior today. This idea of financial maximization is more recent, and we can actually track the moment when it entered the bloodstream. It was 1970. America was mired in the Vietnam War. Young men were dying for their country. Their families were sacrificing. And so a new conversation began, saying, well, what obligation do companies have to the greater good? And into this, an economist named Milton Friedman answered this call with an essay in the New York Times that said the social responsibility of a business is to maximize profits. This was a new idea. This was a new idea the New York Times printed. It's accepted person making a new argument about how the world should work. And this had a tremendous effect on how things ran from then on. From 1948 to 1973, wages in America grew almost 100%. And this was true up and down the food chain. The lowest paid worker, the highest paid worker, all saw similar gains of pay. But in 1973, 3 years after Milton Friedman's essay, this stopped. Since then, executive compensation has gone up 1,000%, and worker pay has grown 10% during that same period, which means that if you're looking for the point in time where the American worker was best paid for their productivity, you're talking about 1973, the same year Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon came out. And now we're comfortably numb to this as the new normal. When I picture what's happening here, when I picture what financial maximization is doing to us, the strangest image comes into my mind. I picture the mullet. You all remember the mullet, right? It's the peak of 80s hair technology. You have business in front and party in the back, everything you need. What we live in now is the mullet economy. For 90% of people, for people who are workers, it's business in front. It's wage freezes, it's layoffs, it's job insecurity, more than we've ever seen before. And for the top 10%, it's a party in the back. Big bonuses, soaring compensation, the most profitable period in human history for people at the top. The gap that we have seen in inequality since that time, this is the mullet. People on the top get more, people on the bottom lose what they have, and it produces this structure. It's not an accident. And we could see evidence of the change in financial maximization in other areas too. Since the 1960s, UCLA has done a nationwide study of incoming college freshmen, asking them every year about what they think about life. And one of the questions about their life goals, what are the things that are most important to you? And in 1970, 36% of incoming college students said being very well off financially was essential or very important. 36% said being rich was essential. Today, 82% of students say the same thing. And you can track this. You can see year by year, class by class, our belief in the rationality of financial maximization and of being rich has grown. When we picture self-interest, financial maximization, there's an image that comes to our mind today, and it's the hockey stick graph, where whatever it is we're trying to do is growing so fast, the slope just goes up and to the right. This is the pinnacle of making it. But if you step back just a little bit, we can see that this is just a sliver of what's actually out there. Because the x-axis along the bottom of time, it extends from now all the way into the future. And the y-axis of our self-interest goes from just us to others as it grows. Go from being a single person to having a family and how your self-interest changes. Or being an entrepreneur running something on your own and then going to having 200 employees and what me needs in those contexts. As our self-interest grows, so does our responsibility. And we can designate out these different spaces. These are distinct spaces that are all in our self-interest. There's the now me in the bottom left where the hockey stick lives. That we're really good at. We're really good at maximizing for our right now self-interest. But there are other spaces too. There's now us, what the people who rely on us need, our families, our employees, our communities. There's future me, the person that you want to be when you're older, the wise version that always has the best advice, the values we're trying to live up to. And there's also future us, the next generation. All of these spaces impact us, and we impact all of these spaces with every one of our choices. All of these spaces are in our rational self-interest. Now, I call this way of seeing bentoism, like a bento box. Bento comes from a Japanese word meaning convenience. The bento always has a mix of different things, a variety. It's a healthy mix. It's never too much of one thing. And the bento honors the Japanese dieting philosophy of hara hachibu, which says the goal of a meal is to be 80% full. That way you're still hungry for tomorrow. So bentoism is the same idea, but for our self-interest. A way to see the big picture, a way to conveniently make balanced and healthy choices. So to show you how this works, I want to talk about the movie Pulp Fiction. In Pulp Fiction, Bruce Willis plays a boxer named Butch. He's an aging fighter with one last fight in him, and he agrees to throw it after being paid off by the mob. But when the time comes, Butch doesn't do it. He wins the fight and escapes. And soon he's in a hotel room with his lover Fabian, ready to go on the run. Except as they're getting ready to go, Butch discovers that Fabian forgot to pack his watch. And not just any watch, his dead war hero father's gold watch. The same one that Christopher Walken memorably describes hiding in a very uncomfortable place earlier in the movie.
Thanks for being with us today on Janette's TV. I'm your host, Janette Burke, signing off. Please remember to like, comment, and share all our posts with your family and friends. You will find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, Vimeo, YouTube, you name it, we're there. Hashtag Janette's TV. And until next time, continue to be fabulous.